Our scripture reading tonight is from God's holy word, Hebrews 1, verses 1 through 3. God, after he spoke long ago to the fathers and the prophets in many portions and in many ways, in these last days has spoken to us in his Son, whom he appointed heir to all things. Through him also he made the world. And he in the radiance of his glory and the exact representation of his nature, and upholds all things by the word of his power. When he had made purification of sins, he sat down at the right hand of his majesty on high.
Now, I've found over time that there are many things that we say, many kind of sayings that have passed down from generation to generation, and then we kind of find out what the meanings of those were back when they first began. Not really the meaning now. It's kind of being carried on, and sometimes it gives us pause as we say some of those things that we've heard all of our lives maybe, and no one's thought anything about it, kind of the etymology of it all. There are sayings that we hear from people, and sometimes they can have meanings that, though when they say them, that they can be problematic. Sometimes they're not. Sometimes a person says something they don't really mean anything serious about it, but sometimes they do. And they mean something that would be something that necessarily we wouldn't think, but it may be reflective of things that are going on in our culture, in our societies. These sayings can be used in ways that would lead someone actually away from Christ and his teaching. And in those moments, we need to listen, and we need to tell people what Jesus has said that might come to bear against those things. I want to look at 5 different things we hear people say today, and what Jesus said in regard to those things. Our reading just a moment ago from Hebrews chapter 1 tells us that in these last days, in the Christian dispensation, God has spoken to us through Jesus Christ. And he is the exact representation of the Father. He told the disciples there on the night before he died, if you have seen me, you have seen the Father. He is the exact representation of the Father. Well, we hear some people say today, and I've heard this for years, just follow your heart. But Jesus says, follow me. There's some places where follow your heart's not a bad thing, right? I mean, follow, if you care about somebody, if you love somebody, if you want to get married, follow it. We say sometimes follow your heart, to follow, the love that you have for somebody. And a lot of times it doesn't mean anything, but we have to be careful with that. Because ultimately, our heart can lead us astray. We're talking about things that are religious. It's not about following my heart. It's about following Jesus' heart. It's about following him. And ultimately, if I just want to go my own way, my own feelings, my own heart, then that very often can lead me astray. Jeremiah is told in Jeremiah chapter 10 and verse 23, I know, O Lord, that a man's way is not in himself, nor is it in man who walks to direct his steps. Ultimately, whatever my heart says, the Bible makes it very clear that whatever's in my heart doesn't have the means to direct my steps in the way that I truly need to go. In Jeremiah chapter 17 and verse 9, he says that there's nothing more deceitful than the heart. I have known people, I have sat down with people, and I have talked to people who are telling themselves lies. And it's very easy to lie to yourself. It's very easy for you to tell yourself things and literally make it something that you believe with all of your heart. And you let your heart deceive you in such times. And so we need to make certain that our belief system and what's moving us from a standpoint of our Christianity is not what I feel or not what my heart is saying, but what Jesus is saying to me. To follow the words of Jesus in order to be like him, to enable the words that he has spoken, to guide our hearts. He's the only one to live perfectly in this life, to endure every temptation and then some that you and I don't even have to face, that he faced because he was God. to have every temptation that you and I have faced, and yet He did it without sin. And so He is an expert. He is someone that has shown how life should be lived, and therefore He is worth our following. Some people will say as well, and it's almost a similar type statement, and that is, be true to yourself. And there's places where that's not a problem. But Jesus says, whoever wants to be my disciple must deny himself. And that's in Luke chapter 9 and verse 23. The problem is that sin ultimately comes from self. James tells us in James chapter 1 that it is the lust within us that gives birth to sin. It is the things that I desire. I don't have, there's sins out there that I don't have a problem with. I don't have a desire for those things. I don't want to do those things. And I never have any problem with that, right? I'm sure every one of us can think about sins that we know, things that we know are sins, and yet we don't have a problem with it on any day. But I guarantee you, every single one of us know of some sins that we do struggle with. And there's some part of ourself that is driving that is causing us to lust for those things, as James chapter 1 and verse 14 says. Oftentimes when people are going in this direction, it turns into similar things to, going with your heart, but is, I feel this, or I feel that, or, this is what makes me feel this way or that way. And ultimately that's a poor guide for our lives. We need to deny self. We need to put aside our selfish desires, the things that are constantly focused upon us, and we need to seek to be that daily disciple of Jesus. See, that's what it says there in Luke chapter 9 and verse 23, where He says to pick up your cross, deny self daily, and follow me. Be my disciple. That's how I'm a disciple of Jesus Christ. The truest you will ever be to yourself is when you admit to your shortcomings. When you admit to your failings. When you, as Jesus put it in Matthew chapter 5 and verse 4, when you're poor in spirit. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for they shall inherit the kingdom. And so, that I come to understand that, the most honest I am with myself is the fact that I understand how short I come of the glory of God, as Romans chapter 3 tells us. And in that moment that we seek to be a disciple. Some people will say, just believe in yourself. But Jesus said to believe in me. To believe in Him. John chapter 3 and verse 16, that whosoever believeth in Him should not perish, but have everlasting life. And that belief has power in it because of the love of the Father that sent Him to this earth to die upon the cross. But we need to believe that Jesus knows better than us. And when we believe in what Jesus has said, when we believe in the life that He has shown to us in His life, the example that He has set for us, the pattern, as Peter put it, that He left for us, when we trust that that is the best way to live, and really that's what faith is all about, that's what belief is all about, it's about trust. When we trust that that's the best way to live, then we'll be the people that God wants. And it's not about believing in me, it's about believing in the one who can save me. One you hear today a lot, and Miranda and I even kind of joke around about this every now and then. She'll tell me to speak my truth. And that is, live in your truth. Kind of one that's popped up in the past few years. But Jesus said, I am the truth. John chapter 14 and verse 6, Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life, and no man comes to the Father except by me. And people oftentimes, I think part of this saying, it kind of comes out of this subjective idea that goes on in our society about truth, that it's kind of subjective to the person, that every person has their own truth, so to speak. But the truths that matter most in this life do not come from us. The truths that matter most in this life do not come from me, or do not come from you. The truths that matter most in this life come from God. They come from Jesus Christ. People in our world today holding on to this idea that they can make up their own truth. Let me tell you something. Just because a person says something is the truth does not make it true. Just saying it doesn't mean. Even believing very strongly in my life about something doesn't make it true. I've talked to people about things. I knew this lady in the church in Salem, Arkansas, and she believed with all her heart that we didn't land on the moon. Some people out there believe the earth is flat. And, they can believe that all they want. They can be passionate about it, and they can really be strongly attached to it, but it will never make it true. Truth is not determined by our willpower. It is determined by what is real and what is true, and that truth comes from God. Whatever a person believes to be true cannot be true if it ever in any way contradicts what God has said. Because the minute that we contradict what God has said, then we know for certain that what I'm saying is not the truth. So we need to seek the truth. And here's the contrast. We need to seek the truth. We don't need to sit around trying to create it. It's already there. Just seek it. God has already provided it to us. And last of all this evening, some people say as long as you're happy. As if happiness is the end all of this world. Happiness is kind of a fleeting thing. It's kind of one of those things that comes and goes. There are things much deeper, such as joy, peace, those kind of things, hope. But people fixate on happiness. And yet it oftentimes just doesn't last very long, and it comes and goes in spurts. I've often made the joke that I can be sitting at home and being very happy, and Jenny will come in and tell me I got to do some kind of housework. And it ends right there. I mean, that's just how quick it can go. It can just come and go in a heartbeat. But while people say as long as you're happy, Jesus says this: what will it profit a man if he gains the whole world and loses his soul? And I think in people's drive to be happy, I've seen so many times in the past 31 years that people are being driven to find whatever happiness that they're seeking in their lives, and it is their Christian life, it is the church that becomes a victim to it. Maybe it's success in a business, and therefore they're so engaged in that business that they're never at church. They're never a part of the Lord's family. And what will it profit them to gain whatever it is they're looking to gain and be happy for that little moment and ultimately lose their soul over it? Moment we're talking about when we compare these two, it's looking at a moment of happiness versus eternal comfort, peace, and joy. Having a moment, if this life is like a vapor that appeareth for a moment and vanishes away, how much less is a moment of happiness compared to what God is going to give us one day in heaven? In Jesus' parable of the farmer in Luke chapter 12, we see that the farmer had a very profitable crop, and he was happy. And he planned on being happier. And he was going to tear down his barns right and build bigger barns and store his wheat. And he's going to sit back and just enjoy life. And the Lord came and said, tonight's it. It's over. And he condemns him for what the attitude that he had. So he was happy in his success, and yet he was lost. So what will a man give for his soul? What would it profit him to be happy and lose his soul? Nothing. There is no profit in such things. So tonight, as we think about these things, I hope that in all things in your life, you listen to Jesus. You listen to the words that He says, the truth that He gives. That you don't listen to the world. You don't listen to your feelings. You don't listen to your heart. You just listen to the one that has all truth. The one who is the way, the truth, and the life. The one who can get you from this life to the Father in heaven. Listen to Him. And you'll never regret that decision when you reach eternity. This evening, if we can help you in any way in that journey of coming to Jesus, of being His disciple, of denying self, of picking up your cross and following Him, then we want to do that if you'll let us. Why don't you come as we stand as we sing.